look at how large data analyses can be applied to a very different project.
Well, good evening, everyone. Every year, a significant number of pregnancies will result in the babies being born early, a condition called prematurity. The World Health Organization reports that over 150 million babies were born preterm in the last decade. Chances are you or someone you know has been touched by a preterm birth in some way. Infants who are born before 37 weeks are considered premature. The earlier the infant is born, the more medically fragile they are. Typically, being born early puts the infants at increased risk for dying or having other serious medical conditions like chronic lung disease or developmental delays. These infants are typically treated in the hospitals within the neonatal intensive care units or the NICUs. This is where they're able to receive the specialized care that they need. Once the infants are medically stable, the care focuses then on having them grow and develop, which usually takes a lot of time because we want their little lungs and bones to develop. So our goal here at KSU is to help provide clinicians with more information about preterm infant size and growth over time, how they impact different outcomes, ultimately to impact patient care in such a way that saves lives and improves the quality of lives, which we do save. So you may wonder how one enters this area of research. Well, you go on vacation with your friend who looks at you on the cruise deck and says, I need your expertise as a biostatistician and programmer to help me on a project that I'm working on. So as we set sail for Mexico, my journey into preterm infant growth research began. On this, I collaborate with two clinicians, Dr. Olson, who is a neonatal dietitian, and Dr. Clark, who is a neonatologist. They provide me with the clinical questions that me and my team then use clinical data to answer. All of the questions we answer are related in some way to preterm infant growth and size. Part of the routine growth assessment of preterm infants is that their weight, length, and head circumference are measured. Now keep in mind, these are very tiny infants, so optimal growth are very small increments as well. So it's very essential that we have the right tools and equipment for the clinicians to be able to track this growth. One of the tools that we use are growth curves. If you've had kids, you may have heard about percentiles of their growth. Well, there are actually unique curves for the NICU population, and these allow comparison of the infants to their peers born at the same age. Based on these growth curves, infants are then classified as small, appropriate, or large for their gestational age. Those classifications are then used by clinicians to identify infants who are at increased risk of different outcomes, as well as to better target nutrition for the infants who are in the NICUs. Now, one of our clinical collaborators noticed that infants who were approaching discharge from the NICU were classified as appropriate for their weight, but they look a little different, right? So some are short and chubby like a bowling ball, while others are long and very skinny like a string bean. So this began a part of our research where we started looking at the proportionality of the infants. So basically a weight for length rate so we can help the infants grow proportionally. So really we're using this proportionality to identify disproportionate growth so we can provide targeted nutrition to help the little infants grow, hence Grow Baby Grow for the project name. So to answer these clinical questions, we use a large data set of infants from approximately 20% of U.S. NICUs. This translates to about 1.5 million babies. The size of our data set allows us to answer questions that other research teams are not able to answer. So now that we have the clinical questions from our clinical collaborators and we have our data set, me and my team of students began our research and quest to find what is the best measure of proportionality for these preterm infants. So we pushed up our sleeves, we dug into the literature, pulled out our statistical toolboxes, and were able to identify that BMI is the best measure of proportionality. This is something that was not previously known for this particular population of babies. So we are actually blazing a trail and filling in gaps in literature to better provide information to the clinicians about BMI and how it can be used in practice. We have a series of publications in medical journals, all of which involve both undergraduate and graduate student authors, providing clinicians with additional tools and information on how you can use BMI in medical practice. So this work led us to a successfully funded grant from the Gerber Foundation. And we are looking at how these size classifications, small, appropriate, and large for age, for these different size metrics, weight, length, head circumference, and now BMI as the measure of proportionality, predict different outcomes. Our research team has been able to identify both maternal, or mom, and neonatal, baby, risk factors for predicting mortality and other serious outcomes associated with prematurity. Additionally, we've provided clinicians with information on how BMI can be used in addition to weight and length in the initial birth assessment. So, together, me and my students are using data to impact care and change lives. A side benefit of this is that we're training the next generation of clinical researchers. They have the unique opportunity to work with a real, large, messy medical data set while collaborating with clinicians on real clinical questions. But they also work at lots of different companies, you may notice, not just medical companies. So we're not just impacting the care of infants and changing the lives of the students we work with, but we're also impacting our local community and beyond by training the students to work with you. So in conclusion, we're here are providing clinicians with the data and tools that they need to better understand preterm infant growth and how growth impacts different, everything about the infant's lives, right? So as we like to say in lab, grow, baby, grow.